Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from 𝐑𝐄𝐃. AITA for being mad that my wife won't believe my stupid but true explanation. I went to Vegas with my former frat bros for a bachelor party because one of them is getting married soon. We all graduated over a decade ago. Anyway, one of our guys passed out early in his hotel room, which he and I shared. He drank too much. Naturally, we bought and booze, one tiny 1.7 ounces airplane bottle, at a convenience store late at night on the walk back from the slots to our rooms, which were all adjacent to one another, and we emptied all of it on him so he would wake up confused, which he did. It was super funny. I had paid for the stuff from the convenience store, and well, I drunkenly left the receipt in my pocket without realizing it. Fast forward home. My wife found the receipt when cleaning my laundry the next morning and wakes me up to ask, "Why do you have a receipt on your credit card from Vegas at 2 a.m. for and booze?" I told her. My legit answer was the debauchery I typed above. She's pleased. But I'm not sure what to do. I actually didn't do anything wrong. And now I'm mad she doesn't believe me, and is remaining angry as if I cheated, when all I was doing was being silly and playing a joke on a friend. To be clear, I'm not mad at my wife, just mad this is happening. My life hurts. Please advise. TD/DR. Bought and booze, put it on friend who passed out in Vegas as a prank. Wife thinks I cheated on her because she found the receipt for the and booze. I'm dumb. Edit 1? No, there are no photos. This prank was pretty mild compared to the stuff we have done, and it was on the way to bed, so this wasn't a photo op. We also don't record compromising stuff of each other as a general matter. Like I said above, we graduated more than a decade ago and aren't the TikTok generation filming everywhere. Edit 2. This particular friend, the one who passed out and got condoms on his face, at least during college, was always the guy who got too drunk, passed out early, and woke up with random stuff on his face that we put there while he was passed out. This may be what ends up saving me. I may have her just call him, or vice versa. Edit 3. Someone on here, brilliantly, suggested I get the hotel hallway camera video. I don't know why I didn't think of that. It will show me and all of the guys walking into my room, and then shortly after the guys going into their adjacent rooms, with no further activity until everyone left in the morning, and importantly, no girls going in or out of the rooms. Now I just hope the hotel will provide it. Edit 4. The hotel is helping. The manager I talked to was, luckily, a total bro who was in our same fraternity at another school, and completely understood what I was saying. Their camera system has a motion-based event thing that lets them jump to when people go in and out of rooms, and our area happened to be in a place where the camera was pointing just at our rooms and one or two others, so almost all the events are for our doors. The guy said he sees the full group of us going in, us come out minus our one friend, us go into my room with the convenience store bag, and then everyone but me leave my room. No further action till we left in the morning for checkout. He's going to figure out how to get me the footage and said he'd WhatsApp video if the hotel won't release it officially. Sometimes the universe does these things. Edit 5. Showed her the footage. She's good now. She, rightfully, gave me an earful. OMG, you're such an idiot. I didn't need to you prove it to me, but I'm glad you did. Don't be such a idiot next time. As I played the clips, she relaxed as all the timestamps and images aligned with my wacky story, and I could tell she was picturing us and remembering how we get in these situations. It all started to click, and I saw a lot of relief come over her. Thank God for good-hearted people out there coming through in a pinch. I'm definitely paying things forward in the future when people need my help. Thanks for everyone who entertained this and wasn't quick to dismiss or call BS. Some of you get it, so thank you. OP is not an AH for the prank. However, his wife's reservations are also justified, especially when she found clear proof in OP's pocket that he bought condoms. However, it is disappointing that OP's wife didn't believe him. Nevertheless, neither OP nor his wife is an AH. Let's now jump onto the next story from mediocre_sky_7526. AITA for expecting an apology when my dad made an impromptu speech at my wedding. I just got married over the weekend, and it was really a fantastic day. Everything went according to plan, except for when it came time for speeches. I asked me and my spouse's parents who wanted to make a speech. My mother and my spouse's father decided they would like to speak. When it came time for speeches, my dad stood up next to my mom and started making a lengthy speech, with personal stories about my partner, all these memories throughout the years. It was clearly thought through as if he had been planning it. I was sitting there so confused because he never expressed interest in speaking. Therefore, I didn't look thrilled. I made eye contact with him and gestured under the table to cut the speech. He stopped. We all clicked glasses, but my feelings were hurt. Some backstory. I had explicitly asked for no surprises on my wedding day. My dad is known to surprise people during big occasions in a way that is only amusing to him. That is, on my sweet 16, I asked him to not show a montage of baby photos of me because I was a very self-conscious young girl who didn't want that plastered on a screen for everyone to see, and he did it anyway. On my brother's wedding day, my dad went into their hotel room and trashed it with fake flower petals, paper plates thrown on the floor, confetti everywhere, and they had to spend their first day of marriage cleaning it up. I also did a first look with my dad, had him and my mum join me in the car to the church. He walked me down the aisle. We had a father-daughter dance, and we played my parents' wedding song during the wedding and dedicated a dance to them. All that to say, I thought he was sufficiently involved in the wedding enough that when he said he didn't want to make a speech, I didn't think twice about it. My parents did financially help with the wedding, as did my spouse's family, which is why we asked them who wanted to make speeches, which family members they wanted to invite, etc. I felt like we did all the right things. I think it's also worth mentioning that I don't have a massively close relationship with my dad. We used to clash a lot when I was growing up. Fast forward to yesterday, my mom called me, and I told her that felt like I deserved an apology for the impromptu speech because I should have been informed beforehand. I didn't say that I was embarrassed by it, but I felt it was disrespectful to my spouse, and I who had spent 2 years planning a wedding. And it wasn't necessarily fair to my MIL, who was the only one who didn't speak at the wedding because she wasn't aware she could. My dad totally blew up. He called me an ungrateful bitch, and that he doesn't consider me his daughter. He was completely lying and saying that I never asked him to make a speech, and that he tried to hug me after the speeches, and I turned away, which never happened. He also told me he wasn't at all involved in the wedding because he didn't come dress shopping with me, and I didn't ask him to come to the hotel with my mom and I the night before the wedding. For some context, my dad has no interest in clothes, so I didn't think he needed to be at the dress appointments. And the only reason my mom stayed at the hotel with me is because she has a hard time waking up, and I wanted to make sure she wasn't late to hair and makeup in the morning. He also said I looked mad during our dance together, but quite frankly I was. The dance happened after this speech, and it was difficult for me to have this special moment with him when I felt like my boundaries were so obviously ignored on my wedding. He said I humiliated him by cutting him off, but even some of my closest friends told me they didn't even realize I did that, so I didn't make a scene when doing so. I'm feeling really confused. My gut is telling me I have every right to have asked for an apology, but I'm starting to second guess myself. OP is not an AH for demanding an apology when her father overstepped her boundaries, because OP has clearly told everyone that she didn't want any surprises at her wedding. OP's father is being a little bit of an AH for his speech, so I would rate him 1 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now move on to the next story from life_is_stranger_. AITA for dating my former best friend's ex-BF. Basically, I had a best friend that I knew from school. We lived 5 mins apart and became best friends within a short time. We were inseparable and shared everything to the point where I slept at her parents' house almost every night for about 2 months at 17 because I had problems with my mom. When I met her in 2016, I was 15, she was 18. I had my issues with depression and panic attacks. She had BPD, according to her, has self-harmed and was overall very emotional, but so was I TBH. She was the best. I loved her so much. Hanging out with her was the most alive and happy I felt. I've always considered us partners in crime, almost like soulmates. She just had this thing about her. She is extremely charismatic, and once you get to know her, you wouldn't want to miss her again. I'm kind of the opposite, very shy at first, and I hate being the center of attention. But I also was at my lowest with her from time to time, due to her sometimes unreasonable behaviors, being overall very emotional, and sometimes just being aggressive and starting drama. I, as her best friend, always tried to support her, but realized that if I didn't agree with her, she'd feel betrayed and get angry at me. So, I always tried to please her and not talk back, to avoid confrontation and just be on her good side. Fast forward to 2018, I had started smoking weed the year before. Initially because I thought it could help with my panic attacks. She tried it too, and by that point, we were smoking just for fun. We met a few guys around her age who were smoking as well, and so we hung out together. Pretty soon she started a casual thing with one of the guys, and they started dating after a few weeks. These guys were basically drug addicts, taking MDMA, LSD, amphetamines, and smoking weed and drinking. We both got into it kind of, but after a month or two of doing drugs, I didn't want my life to take that kind of turn, so I stopped with everything except smoking weed and taking MDMA every few months. She was with her BF, who was still addicted, so she took that stuff more frequent than me. I think that's a big part of it, all going to shit later, because she got more and more emotional over time. She also started getting extremely toxic to her BF, very controlling and manipulative. They actually broke up for a few months, then got back together. But even after that, they were always fighting. At one point after their break, they stopped with the amphetamine and daily drug binges, just continued smoking weed. In the meantime, she became nastier to him, and to me as well, threatening suicide multiple times, shutting off her phone, and while we're all looking for her, just out smoking a cigarette and her battery died. She pulled like that, always started fights, mostly with her BF, but also with other friends. He wasn't a saint either, but he really loved her. And even back then, I remember feeling so sorry for him sometimes. One minute she was angry, screaming at the top of her lungs. The next, she was cool again. Sometimes from one minute to another, her demeanor could change 180 degrees. Fast forward to the beginning of 2020. Their relationship is at an all-time low. They argue almost every day. She's told me that she believes that she's only with him now because she gets free weed out of him. I told her many times at that point that they are just not good for each other. I couldn't possibly tell her that, in my opinion, I thought that her actions were causing a lot of the issues between them, because then she'd be mad at me. So, I always advised her to just break up, take some time for herself, and deal with her issues first before getting into another relationship. She always had a new BF very shortly after getting out of a relationship. One faithful night in March 2020, we were all hanging out, and after I went home, they had a big fight that started because he was petting a cat instead of cuddling up with her BTW, and the fight ended with her crying, and according to both parties, her banging her head and shoulder against the wall so hard that she left a dent in the wall. For context, talking about a brick wall, not drywall. She stood in front of my house crying, and we talked a lot. She told me they were breaking up now, or at least going on a break. The next day, in a group chat with another close friend of ours, she described it in a casual manner, like, "You know he was screaming at me, and you know how I am, so I started banging my head against the wall." Which made me rethink if things really happened that way. Oftentimes, she told small lies to exaggerate a story. So at that time, I'm thinking that this situation sucks for my friend, and I want to be there for her. And I was there for her, spending time with her whenever I was in town. I went to university on weekdays a few hours away. But I'm also thinking about her ex-BF, who over the years has become a good friend of mine too, and TBH, I felt so sorry for him. He had moved in with her, and now had to go back to his parents, who he had a difficult relationship with, lots of neglect and abuse. Probably why he started drinking and doing drugs at a young age. He had also neglected a lot of his old friends because she didn't like them and started a fight whenever he wanted to hang out with them. So I thought I just had to listen to his side as well. He told me what happened that night and told me he just wants his peace now. He's done with her and that he feels like the biggest weight has been lifted off his shoulder. He told me he understands that I would want to cut contact because I'm her best friend. I told him that's bullshit and that I won't cut contact. I'm here if he needs to talk, and oh boy, that we did. We talked a lot, and the more I listened, I realized that she f***ed him up on a much deeper level than I thought, and that she lied to me on different occasions about certain situations, just as she lied to him about some stuff. I was sad, but not surprised, since she pulled shit like that more than once. At first, she said that she feels sorry for him and wishes him the best, they just need space, and even texted him for a bit after. After about 2 weeks, he stopped replying though. because like he said, he was done with her. Suddenly, she started saying that he ruined her life and told me that she will cut contact with everyone that keeps contact with him. I told her that I wanted to stay neutral in this situation. She ignored that and just repeated hysterically that she will ghost anyone who still talks to him. To me, it felt like she wanted to do damage control because she knew if I talked to him, he's going to tell his side and some lies could surface. I told her that I'll be there for her, but that I think both of them are at fault. I left her place and hung out with him the same evening. The next day I texted her, no reply. I called, no answer. I didn't want to run after her for the 100th time, so I stopped trying. After about 2 weeks of silence, I texted her asking if that was it. She actually replied this time, telling me she doesn't need me in her life and that I have lost her. I tried telling her that this was all unnecessary, but she didn't want to hear it. Maybe I could have salvaged our friendship if I gave in, told her what she wanted to hear, and cut contact with him. But frankly, I had enough, and so I gave up. That was the end of our friendship. She cut contact to another friend that also didn't want to take sides as well. I was angry at first, but shortly after I also felt kind of relieved, which I felt horrible about. I had a bit of a mental breakdown as well, and just wanted my life to change, now that I had lost my best friend. I quit all other stress factors in my life, university, drinking, broke up with my then BF, and just wanted to heal. Her ex and I basically became best friends from then on. I suddenly had lots of time on my hand due to COVID lockdown, and so did he. We hung out every day. Now we were best friends, hanging out, both single and bored, so we started sleeping together. Neither of us had feelings at that point, and we were just upgrading our friendship at that point. He got a job at construction, and even though he was tired, he still walked 40 minutes to my place every evening to spend time with me. This went on for like 6 months, until my mom moved to another town, which meant that we could only hang out on weekends. And I really started to miss him. A lot actually, which led me to realize that maybe I want more than just stay friends. But I was hesitant to tell him because I didn't want to lose my best friend. Again. But I also knew if we didn't end up together and we would find other partners, eventually we would have to stop seeing each other at some point. I told him just that. He told me he feels the same way, but he just doesn't want to rush anything because I am very important to him. So we just continued on, almost like before, but now it was more intimate. We were now kissing and cuddling, and soon it felt like we were together already. So one day I asked him if he wanted to officially date, and he said yes. That was April 2021, a bit more than a year after my friendship with his ex ended. We've been together since then, and are now talking about getting married and having kids soon. We also have a cat together. Sometimes I still think about my friend, mostly because her now BF is good friends with my BF's best friend. She still talks about us and hates our guts. She is also still a hot mess, and according to our friend, she is even nastier to her current BF. I have made my peace a long time ago, and honestly, I don't hate her. I don't know what I'd think about me in her situation. I realize that she has a lot of mental issues, and losing both her BF and her best friend in the span of a month must have been really hard on her back then. Sometimes I ask myself if I was the bad guy in that situation. She probably thinks I was after him all along, but that is really not how it happened. He was just there when I needed a friend, and it turned into the best relationship I've ever had. Despite all this, I can't help feeling bad for her, and a little part in my brain still feels bad for how things turned out. What do you guys think? Am I the asshole in this? OP is not an AH for entering in a relationship with her friend ex-boyfriend, because all this happened after their breakup. OP is good to go. Let's now jump on to the next story, from present_warning5596. AITA for breaking up with my BF of 5 years and abandoning his entire family. I, 29F, broke up with my BF, 26M, a few months ago. This is going to be a long post, but I feel very lost lately, and I think a lot of informations are needed to understand everyone's point of view. First of all, my ex, let's call him Frank, and I are French, and we were together for 5 years when I broke up. While we were together, we went through a lot of tough events. His family was a mess, respectfully. His mother was very depressed and living with an abuser. She was illegally living in her ex-husband's, ex's dad apartment, because she had nowhere to go, and was trying to end her life at least every month. His father tried to make her leave, but since they couldn't peacefully talk, It turned into arguments, and he decided to go through legal actions to get her out because he was paying late fees every 2 months for ex's mom and her abuser, which had terrible repercussions on his own relationship to his GF. That was the situation when I met them. My ex was very confused and worried, so I decided to step up. I took matter in hands and got his mother out of the cursed apartment and found her a place to live. I got her a monthly income through state help and helped to sell the apartment for the father. It helped me build an amazing relationship to them, and my BF was kind of grateful. Sadly, his mother got cancer, and when it was his turn to be there for her, he just played dead. He waited for me to take it on me again. Unluckily, my father had a bad heart attack, and I was already burnt out. I'm the oldest of 3, and I had to carry the situation for my family while my ex didn't step up even once. He even blamed me once while I was at the hospital holding my father's hand because I didn't do grocery shopping. I had to keep going for months, burnt out, basically not sleeping and barely eating. He lost his job at the beginning of next year, not so long later, and just fell apart. He cried for days, never did any research, played video games, and complained. He never planned any visit to his sick mom or to his sick grandmother, and even complained when I told him to go when I was at work so I wouldn't have to drive him. It was honestly draining. I kept finding excuses for him, but he was more and more aggressive and rude, and started to blame me for my disinterest. It was like his whole attitude was legit in his mind because I couldn't have sex with him. He did put a lot of pressure on me about it, was very hurtful and rude. That was last year. I helped him find another job with his best friend help. Let's call her Clara. Clara is a good friend and she helped me a lot while he was horrible. She kept telling him he should treat me better, but he never listened. Played victim because his life was miserable and he felt very depressed. Started to claim that he was autistic. I am ADHD too, which made his life a lot harder. Clara went through a rough breakup, and we planned holidays for and with her so she wouldn't be too sad. Except it was terrible. I love her, and I enjoyed time with her, but Frank was awful. He didn't want to listen to her complaints and ignored us and our desires for the program. He wanted to go drink with his cousin every night, and even had a very hard party the night before we were supposed to leave, forcing me to drive with his car, I never drove it, in unknown roads after I had basically no sleep. He promised to be reliable, but never held on to that. It was a turning point to me. He promised it was supposed to be a moment for me too, to thank me for the efforts I did put in our relationship, and it turned out to be about him again and again. I considered leaving for a long time, but decided to stay. We had arguments, very rough ones, because he always said he wanted to marry me, have a house, have children, but he never actually put effort in it. At the beginning of this year, I got very sick, and the doctors suspected I had brain damages. He still didn't step up. Actually, he lost his job again, and tried to leave it to me to find him another job. Once again, Clara stepped up because he couldn't. He found a job at our local grocery store. We live in a village. Everyone knows everyone, and it's okay with me. However, he worked there for months, and everything was okay. I was slowly losing myself, but I guess that wasn't his problem. I had serious health problems, and started to suspect it was due to high blood pressure. Almost got in a car crash, and realized, while my car was blocked and towed, that the only thing I was thinking when caught in the crash was it wouldn't be too bad if I died. Frank was rude to my mother not too long after, and it got us in a huge argument. It's useful to precise that I was having coffee at his dad's, his mom's, or his grand's at least once a week at this point. Spending my time between his family and mine, and the rest trying to take care of my apartment that he never felt the need to help with. I was tired all the time, sometimes so much I wouldn't even find the energy to get up. My friends were very worried, and Clara was often driving me to the hospital so I could take my exams. Frank was working a lot, but he seemed to enjoy it. Despite my work being almost an hour away, and his 5 minutes away, he refused to move because he wanted to stay close. One day, he went to work and came back, almost 3 hours after. He was ashamed and crying and moaning, and after a lot of talking, he admitted he had been fired because he saw a beautiful customer in the shop and took a picture under her skirt. He said he was fired and that the girl was holding charges. I snapped. I didn't yell nor hit. I just decided it was over. I took a bag and left. I told him we were done. The breakup was awful. The apartment belongs to me, and I told him to leave. I pushed him to join his cousin who's living in Australia, and he did. He pressured me, harassed me, he was rude, and tried to make everybody think I was cheating on him. He tried to negotiate over furnitures he wouldn't even take on his trip, and never paid for. He was awful and I was scared and shocked, so I allowed it. I didn't tell anyone about the real reasons of the breakup, and he painted me as the bad guy. I didn't answer any of his family's texts, even when his mother cried over the phone and threatened to end herself. Even when his gran cried that she lost her grandson because he was in another country. That's where I might be the asshole. I abandoned them. I have all his mother's accounts, and I'm not sure she'd be able to actually keep her situation going without me. I took care of his brother and it's the same for him. His gran never hurt me, but I didn't answer. I was just overwhelmed and exhausted. He called me and yelled at me because a few friends heard about why we broke up. Some of them from me, some of them from rumors, because that's how villages work. Clara heard about it and we became a lot closer. He got crazy about me getting closer to some of our friends he was always jealous about. His reasons aren't unreasonable, I guess. He's worried for his family, and especially his mother. And he thinks I'm taking away his friends. I can understand. But from my point of view, he's very obviously responsible for what happened to him, and I won't be blamed for bringing to him the consequences of his own actions.
AITA?
OP isn't the AH for leaving Frank and his family. Though it might seem harsh, she had been carrying the emotional and physical burden for years without support. Frank's actions, emotional neglect, and irresponsibility led to the breakup. OP's exhaustion and overwhelming circumstances justified her decision to walk away, even if it hurt his family. So, instead of OP, Frank and his family are AH, and I would rate them 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now move on to the next story from Landing_Crater. AITA for breaking things off with my long-distance boyfriend after he locked me outside of his place. I, 23, female, am a full-time student. The program I'm currently attending requires me to be in a different state than my residence, so a year ago I moved, leaving my friends/family and boyfriend behind. My boyfriend, 24, and I decided to continue with the relationship and just do long distance. We've had a few breaks in the process, but we were generally working towards a strong relationship. For some background, I do have a military commitment which requires me to go back home once a month. This is helpful because I can spend time with my loved ones and not feel as much of the distance between us. Anyway, this month I go to my military weekend and get picked up by my boyfriend. He tells me that he would like for us to go bar hopping with his friends one of the nights, so I offered to be the DD and drove them around. At the end of the night, everyone was trashed and I drove them all home. My boyfriend isn't a sappy/romantic person. He doesn't like to verbally express his love unless he's drunk. During the ride, he told me that when I'm gone, he feels lonely and doesn't oppose for other women to talk to him. He later clarified that he would let them approach him and engage in conversation, but once he noticed any flirting, he would tell them he had a girlfriend. To me, I was a little concerned, but didn't think much of it, because he hasn't shown any unloyalty towards me in the past. The next day, I noticed, when he was on SC, that he was snapping a female. This, however, is unusual for him to do. On top of that, him and I recently lost our best friend streak. On SC, if you both are best friends, then a specific emoji will appear next to their name. So, I asked him who his best friend was on the app, and he acted surprised to see her as his one. He explained that she was one of his friend's girls, and she snaps him a lot, but he only sends her a snap a day for the streak. Although that may have been the case, I generally was upset while dropping him off at the rate of work. He was dropped off in a different location as the usual spot, but I didn't think much of it. When I came to grab him, I sat in the normal spot and messaged him that I was outside. After 10 minutes, a few messages and calls from my end were directed his way. Once he got to the car, I was frustrated and in colorful language asked him what took him so long and why he wasn't responding to any of my attempted calls/messages. At this point, we were both upset each other, and he started yelling me, saying that I should have picked him up in the new spot I dropped him off. He said that if I had common sense I wouldn't have been waiting for so long, and that it wasn't his fault that I wasn't paying attention. He later told me that his phone had died and wasn't able to receive calls. Once he was done yelling, the car got silent. I didn't want to talk and just wanted to go back to sleep and cool off. He refused to drive me back until I talked, so he pulled the car to a parking lot and we sat there for a few minutes. After that, without saying anything, he grabbed my bag from out of my lap to get his room key. I tried to get my bag back, but he wouldn't let me until he received his keys. Once his place, he told me that I wasn't allowed in until I was willing to talk. A few minutes later, he messaged me saying that the plans for us to go meet up with my friends for dinner will be cancelled if I don't talk to him by a certain time. Still frustrated, I sat in the hallway, the only place with reception, and called a friend to come get me. They then got me and dropped me off at the rate of the airport. I cancelled plans with my friends and sat at the airport. He called me about 4 hours later, asking me who I was with, and I told him I was the terminal. He then got upset and argued that it was crazy for me to act this way. In the emotion of it all, I told him that I didn't want to continue with the relationship due to the treatment I was getting. We have been no contact, and he has unadded me from all social media. So I genuinely want to know if I'm the AH in this situation? OP is not an AH for standing up for herself. Her boyfriend's behavior was rude and dismissive, and his actions, particularly being open to other girls and streaking with them, are disrespectful. So I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's boyfriend 3.5. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.